All right, I'm going to show you how I mount my scope bases. Hello, YouTube. In this video, I'm going to show you one of the methods I've developed for mounting my scope bases. There are other methods, but this is what I use. Right, so first off, prep work that's already been done. Right, we used some rubbing alcohol for the 90%, or you use denatured alcohol. You can use brake cleaner or acetone, and you want to clean off the surface that your base is going to go on, and you want to clean the underside of your base. You also want to degrease your screws with rubbing alcohol or other solution, as well as degrease the insides of the threads in the receiver. Now, I like to use I like my base, and now that it's been degreased, any moisture that gets in there can cause this receiver to rust. It is a steel receiver. This base is aluminum. I'm going to protect that as well as also help it to stay in place using some green Loctite. So I'm going to take a little green Loctite, and you don't need a lot. I'm going to try to put a little bit on the, let's get it down there. Just between the screw holes, it's going to spread itself out. I've already checked that this mount pretty much sits flush on the receiver. So I'm going to try to put it down straight down, and the excess should kind of squeeze out. Just want to make sure that there's a path for it to go all the way around. Some of it is going to squeeze out. It is going to get messy. Some of it will get into the screw holes, but we'll fix that. All right, that should be it for the green Loctite. All right, now I'm going to take my base. I'm going to set it down as close to lining up with the holes as I can. Just setting right there. And give it a little bit of pressure down. All right. Now that green Loctite is going to help keep this base from moving whatsoever. Right, and before I go any further, I'm just going to check inside of my holes here and make sure that I get any of that green Loctite out in case it found its way into the holes. I don't have any there. All right, we'll clean up the rest of it here in a bit. I didn't really get any, none got inside of the holes. And then I'm going to start with my screws from the front to the back. And I'm just going to go just a little bit snug. All right, screws have been degreased. And method I use for my screws, right? For these, I'm going to use a little bit of blue Loctite. Make sure you shake it up first. All right. Let's give it a tiny little bit of blue Loctite on there. It's probably more than we need. Use a Q-tip, just trying to dab a little bit of that excess off of there. It doesn't take a lot. All right, then I'm going to start with the front. And I'm going to start by turning it backwards. Hold it perfectly straight until I feel a click. So I feel a click, I know the threads are starting to engage. So I'm not going to strip it or cross thread it, right? I'm going to turn it in until it is snug. Right, now I did this previously, but I always like to put in this first screw just hand tight snug and then push down at the back of the base. If the back of the base has any flex and it has to move down to contact the receiver, then you don't have a flush fit and you're going to need to bed your base. But we don't have to do that with this one. All right, so our next screw, just going to repeat this for all the screws. A little bit of blue Loctite. That's all we should need. And same thing. I'm going to go backwards till I feel the click. There's the click. I'm going to make sure I got it. Hold it straight up. There's the click. Then I can go in clockwise until we're just snug. That's all we're going for, just a little bit snug. We're going to torque these down to spec here in a moment. Make sure you have your instructions that came with your scope base, that came with your screw, that should have come with the screws as well. And just a tiny little bit of blue Loctite. That's probably a little too much. All right, and then the only reason that I go front to back is, like I said, so that I can check for flex in the mount. Now, some scope bases will have longer screws that are intended to go into the front or the back. So you need to make sure that you're installing them in the right place. If you put them in the wrong spot, they're going to stick down into the path of the bolt, and that's not good. We don't want that. Tiny little drop of blue there. All right, that's it for my blue Loctite. Got maybe just a little too much. Just a little bit of that. That should be good. All right, and this is a 20 MO base, 20 MOA base. Hold it straight up and down. I'm not feeling it click, so there we go. Just snug. All right, now that they're all just a little bit snug, I'm going to back them all off just a tiny little bit. Just a little bit, about half to a quarter to a half of a turn. All right, you're going to see why I'm doing this here in a second. Just a tiny little bit. And then this front one, I'm going to back it off and then turn it in until it's just a tiny, tiny little bit snug, just the slightest little bit of pressure. And I'm going to come on my mount here at the back using the plastic side of this little mallet here. I'm just going to tap it forward a little bit. Now, if you got a high quality mount, it shouldn't really be necessary for that, but I'm just making sure that the load is set. When the gun recoils, it's going to come back and kind of push the mount forward along with your scope. So you want to have it already preloaded onto the front. So I just tap it a little bit onto the back. All right, again, now I'm just snugging them up. From front to back. And now I'm going to switch to my inch-pound torque wrench. All right, so you want to have a inch-pound torque wrench to do this properly, right? Refer to the torque specs that came with your scope base. Now, if you're doing this into an aluminum receiver, this is not going to apply, but this is a steel receiver, Remington 700 receiver, right? And I'm going to torque from the front to the back. I don't want to go all the way there the first time. I'm just going to go most of the way there, come back again. You see some of this green Loctite is starting to squeeze out as we go. From the front to the back, and then just repeat. We're not going all the way there just yet. Now, by now, we should be ready to go all the way there. All right, there's one click. Back to the next one. Click. Back to the next one. Click. And back to the last one. Click. All right, so we should be good there. I'm going to take a Q-tip and clean up my edges here. Get a little bit of rubbing alcohol to help with that. Acetone works really well too. All right, and clean up this green Loctite that squeezed out the edges. This is also going to kind of work its way inside and dilute that Loctite and kind of really help it spread out as well. So we're going to wait a little while and then come back and just double check the torque setting again here after about 5 or 6 minutes of it having set. Now you're going to have quite a bit of time. The Loctite's basically glue, but it's going to take about 24 hours or so for that Loctite to be set up all the way. Right, and it's not permanent. It's the green Loctite, and then again blue Loctite on the screws. So now we sit and wait for a little while. Now, instead of waiting, if you've already got your scope ready to go and you've got your rings, you can mount up your scope and your rings, which I'll cover in another video. You're gonna go ahead and fire 3 shots, and then you're gonna come back and retorque everything down. All right, and then leave it, let it set up for another 24 hours. Same thing would go for your scope ring cap screws, right? You would retorque them after firing, as well as your cross bolts. All right, but yeah, that's pretty much it, pretty straightforward. One thing we just wanna make sure of, we wanna look down inside of the receiver, make sure we don't have any Loctite coming down inside. If we do, we're gonna clean that up with Q-tips. And we want to inspect and make sure that we don't have any screws sticking down inside of the receiver. We're going to verify that our bolt has a clear path. It's not going to be smacking into any of those screws inside of the receiver. All right, completely clear. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna wait, let that set up for another 5 minutes, retorque, and then clean it back up again a little bit with Q-tips, and we can put our scope on and go shooting. All right, I hope this helped out somebody. Have a good one.